Desde países como Rusia hasta Dinamarca y Emiratos Árabes, la filosofía del arquitecto que nos honra esta tarde con su participación concibe un futuro en el que el concepto de vanguardia se abre a un nuevo paradigma de complejidad y riqueza. Pertenece a una generación de arquitectos de alto perfil en sus primeros 40 años de trayectoria que han ayudado a mantener la arquitectura holandesa en alta estima internacional, pero mantiene un sello muy particular y original que no puede ser considerado como un representante típico de ese grupo. En los últimos 20 años, este arquitecto ha creado una cartera muy diversa que contiene proyectos ambiciosos y de alto perfil en los Países Bajos, Europa, especialmente países como Rusia. Cada uno de estos proyectos representa su arquitectura muy personal y expresiva que se relaciona con el contexto histórico y cultural existente. Él viene en esta ocasión a aportarnos su perspectiva y aportarnos sobre todo qué está ocurriendo en Europa en estos momentos y cómo nosotros, como país, República Dominicana, podemos aprender de las mejores prácticas. Recibamos a nuestro conferencista internacional, el arquitecto holandés Erick Van Egeraat.
Good afternoon. My name is Erick. Thank you very much for inviting me, Patricia de Moya, for a wonderful experience. It has been, for my wife and me, a very humbling experience. Humbling because this is one of the best organized events I have attended in many years. Humbling because I have never realized what a diverse country Dominican Republic is, and also humbling because maybe, as most of my work is in Europe, Asia, Middle East, and central part of, let's say, Russia, I've never realized that roads are so important. Your Prime Minister or your Minister this morning explained this to me, and maybe for you it's strange that an architect like me says so, but I don't do roads. I do buildings. And I realize very much that, let's say, in Europe, we take it for granted that everything is connected, that we have roads everywhere, and that things work. And I realized how much of value it is, that this is now going to be one of the main things for you to work on, and I really believe that it's a great, let's say, way for me to learn, again, more from experiences which are not mine. So thank you for this. I was asked to say something about architecture and the city. And this is an architect speaking to you, so be very careful. This is not very easy because it looks like architecture solves everything. And of course it's true. Architecture can be very important, but it is not about how good a building looks. It's about what a building is able to do for you. It's not bad, of course, to look good. It's important for us to try and be better and make things better. That's why I call this presentation Galvanizing the City. We should all be busy trying to make things better. What we have can become better if we all do our own effort and our own contribution. Because you don't know me, I suppose, I have brought with me first some slides about my work, so to understand a little bit what I speak about, from what references I speak about. And think about it like this: I know a little bit about beauty. I have a very beautiful wife, and I'm very proud that she's my wife. But understand, also here, it is not the fact that she's beautiful, it is the fact that she is a person who likes to make things better. Herself, the way she works, the way she behaves, and the way we deal with each other. This is something I learned since I have met her already now 20 years ago. There were other people who were important in my life, my brother and my sister. They also told me, Erick, we know what is nice. We're going to make a snowball. That's very big and fun. And I thought, What's this? This is big, cold, and ugly. So I didn't believe what people said from a very, very young age. And it is very important to understand, because when architects speak, they always sell you something nice. But is it really true? It is only nice when you can accept it, when you can take it on as something you can appreciate. Not because the architect said so, or because the salesperson said so. You should be able to recognize it as something valuable. And I think that's what I tried to do my whole life. This is my first project. I was a student. We did some social housing, social meaning housing for people on the lower end of the spectrum and with little money, students. We did many projects like this over the years. These are all houses which were rehabilitation. Already in the 1980s, we were no longer interested to build bigger cities. We wanted to make the old city better. So we started to renovate old parts and build these houses. This was for 1980 was very special that a young architect could build these kind of things. We built many of those things, and also I started, of course, at a certain moment to do this abroad, because Holland is a small country, so very logically at a certain moment you are not longer liked, so I have to go to another country. So I went to Germany, and in Germany I was able to do this and many other housing projects, also again focusing on the main point of a city, trying to make the city better by making the places where people live better. Not by building huge villas or by building the most exclusive, let's say, musea, but I was focused on trying to make the structure, the texture of the city better. And I think that was, in a way, for a young architect like me, I was 22 when I started, a very good experience to know that before you start to become, let's say, something really special, you first work with the tissue. You work with what a city is made out of. And that's what I learned when I was traveling around Europe. I realized that all the modern buildings I was taught in school, and I was promoting myself, I was very much thinking about other ways to look at architecture. A much more complex architecture, like you see here. You see this, let's say, the sunflower. A very, very simple spiral. That's the way you can analyze the sunflower. But if you put a spiral in your computer, you don't get a sunflower. You have to place all the seeds slightly different. You have to take the trouble to make that special thing work. And that's what I learned from working in many, many places. It's nice to appreciate a complexity, because our life is complex, but it is difficult to make complexity. So working on complexity is what I did many years. This is a building in Budapest, a small extension of a bank. This is the outside. This is on the roof. This is the inside of that same building, where I tried to make sure that the building was not just a renovation, but I wanted to make something almost alien to the building, to make something mysterious. And the banker, the director of this company, a huge company, looked at the plans when he gave me the commission, and he said, "Erick, did we ask for this?" I said, "No, you didn't ask for it." He said, "Okay, but I like it. Let's go." So that's the way we started to work more and more, and we started to make things more complex day by day, because simple-minded realities are not attractive. Our world is not simple. Our world is complex. Our answers should be at least multidimensional, should not be simple. So we did many things. Renovation of this is the former headquarters of the Hungarian Communist Party. We changed it into a new building. Next door I had to do another building. The left is the building. To the right I built a 3 times bigger building, and I started to do this. A renovation of another building in Hungary, a housing project in Prague, a housing project in the Netherlands, a large urban development in the Netherlands in the center of Amsterdam, one of the biggest inner city developments in Amsterdam, around 250,000 square meters of new build in one plot. I worked together with several architects to create the kind of diversity you need in such a project. And I did the same in the city of Bratislava, trying to make a new waterfront for a city which until that time never reached the river. The river was not something to be close to, the river was something to be scared of. And I found the first opportunity to make sure it is possible to go closer to the waterfront and make the city literally reach the river of the Danube at that time. There is a series of projects which I started to do more and more, is of course to try and get into the, let's say, more monumental side of our life. Because building new things is great, but I started to realize we have so many nice buildings. Why don't we reuse them? This is an old place where you put horses in, and the client wanted to have a new museum, so I said, okay, it's a nice composition, forget about extension of the museum, I will build the museum under this building. So we moved the building away, we dug a big hole, built a new museum, and replaced this small building as the entrance building to this whole project. Underground, this is what it is underground. So sometimes it is very good to be loud, but sometimes it's very good to be silent. Sometimes you need to be precise, sometimes you have to be a little bit more wild. And I think this understanding that we cannot give one answer to the complex questions we have is one of the most essential questions in developing good cities. There is not one answer. Don't believe what architects tell you. Don't believe what a politician tells you. Don't believe what a planner tells you. There are always more ways to go and get something done. And it is this diversity which is extremely important. This is a renovation of an old library. It was a terrible building when I got there, and everybody wanted to almost demolish the building and make something wildly new. I discovered every day more of the old building to be beautiful inside, and this is what I found inside. Behind all the decorations built in the 1960s and 70s, I found this. So I didn't design anything. I just peeled all the old stuff off and dusted it up, cleaned it up, and made something which I think is better than I could ever have done it myself as an architect, just recreating what is there. What's wrong with this? That is as much careful redevelopment of your city than building a great piece of architecture yourself. I did the same with this project. This is a very strange project in Germany. You understand that this is East Germany, where at a certain moment they asked me to do a new university complex in the center of the city. Who has the money to put a huge, let's say, complex of a university in the center of the city? Many countries can't afford. The Germans, as you understand, they're a little bit, let's say, not so funny, but when they decide, they do it. They said, okay, Eric, we're going to do it there, on a place middle of the center. I said, well, that's quite special to do something. It's great for the city. But it means also that we have to do something which gives back to the city and not just takes from the city. So we did this project, and it was on the place where this building was original. It was destroyed in 1969, destroyed by the old regime, because in this building, many people who were against the regime were congressing and come together. So the government decided, let's demolish it. And after the reunification of Germany, East and West came together. There was a long discussion what to do. Build it one-on-one back, like it was original? Should we build and forget the past and build something new? And I came with the conclusion that we have to do something which relates to it, but it doesn't necessarily need to be a copy one-to-one. We don't need to hide that we are in a new era. We don't need to hide that we do something new, but at the same time, we should not forget the memory of the past. We should not do as if the past was not there. The memory of what was there is equally important. So I created this interior where we were able to make some parts of the church recreated without even meticulously reconstructing, but reinterpreting. Now it's one of the nicest places. It was just opened with a huge choir. It has one of the best acoustics in Germany at the moment. It is applauded not because of the design, because as you can see, I try to make sure that I am as least visible, and I try to make sure it is as much as possible about what I found there and reinterpret it to create it into a new, let's say, modern building with those who want to think about the past still, let's say, available to do so. It's a university, and of course it has all these details which we worked on 14 years in a row. Every detail has been built exactly the way we have designed it. And that's one thing you can say about the Germans. They are difficult, they are not funny, but they know how to build. Another project in Germany is in Hamburg, in the city, and let's say on the waterfront, previously only used for, let's say, industrial purposes, and we needed to make a new district here. So I was the master planner of this district. I was able to build one of the few first buildings realized there. This is a housing block together with shops and also offices. This is the building. And here you can see the complex and the rest of the buildings now being completed. I did a building in middle of Siberia, a shopping center. When I was asked to go there, most of my Russian clients said, Erick, nobody goes to Siberia. Everybody leaves Siberia. It's not a place you want to be. And I love to work there because one of the nicest places where people are really committed to make something better. A shopping center in the middle of nowhere, where most of the people spend their time in day, and it is again one of the best buildings I could build. This project was built in 2010, and at that time, even in Moscow, the quality of what we built was much less than what I could achieve in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of Siberia. So of course I did many more buildings this is in St. Petersburg in Russia. There's also a project in St. Petersburg where previously, Peter the Great built his ships. A big, let's say, complex for University of Sberbank, one of the biggest banks. It's a 1 kilometer long building. It's a training center with places for people to live, to sleep, and of course, and to conference and to entertain. A bank building in the Netherlands, in the middle of Amsterdam. Let's say the logic was very simple. Usually buildings are heavy below and light above. But above you have a lot of light, daylight, and below you don't have, so I turned it upside down and there you have it. Relatively easy. One law firm occupies this building. This is the interior. A school, university in the middle of Rotterdam. The people who study here can see the harbor where they're going to work, where they're going to advise, where they're going to be consultants. This is the view from inside. Incinerator, waste to energy. This plant is in Denmark, provides energy for 10,000 families. So you get rid of your waste, you get energy, and it looks good. Who wouldn't want to have this? A new park in the Danube in Budapest, and some towers in Moscow. These were the 4 first ones, designed in 2000 and finally completed in 2010. The twin towers, which you can see here. These ones as well. And the slim tower on here, which was completed in 2015. The design of this building originated from an American architect. In 2010, he died, and my client was sort of halfway. He owned the building, he has never been on the site, and said, Eric, can you finish it? I said, well, of course I can finish it, but should we not do something cool? I said, yeah, we'll do whatever you like. I don't really not understand anything about buildings. So we finished it, we made it higher, because at that time I convinced him to be the tallest of Europe. Unfortunately, 2 years later, another building was the tallest, so that's the way it works. My client spent 1 billion euros. Then the crisis came, and he was asking me, Eric, what to do? I said, well, I don't know. If you need the money, sell it. He said, yeah, but you know, if I sell it now, they give me not even 500,000 for it, 500 million. I said, well, then don't sell it. So that's what he did. He keeps it, and by 20 years after now, most likely the building will start making money. So for his children and grandchildren, they have something to save. We did the interior of these buildings as well. We did the logo for the company, because it's not so simple to make a building where you have a logo, and make a logo which is visible 2 kilometers away. This is a screen of 1,500 square meters, but still, it's not easy. I think I spent more time on designing the logo than most of the details in the building. This is the interior of the apartments. And this is the building as it is now. I did recently do some work in the south of Europe. This is Malta. It's like Dominican Republic, but you are much bigger. And maybe better, I don't know. I think better. This is, let's say, they like towers. They have not built any towers, but everybody wants a tower now, so there are many designed and none built. So this might be one of the first that's going to be built. The idea was very simple. If you want people to live there nicely, give them a huge balcony. So apartments of 80 square meter and a 100 square meter balcony. It's much nicer than an apartment of 200 square meter and a balcony of 3 meters. So that's what we did. It's a shopping center under, offices above this, and then the apartments. Here you can see the apartments. There are duplexes, that's the ones with the stairs. And there are, of course, normal. This is the office blocks, all connected, so it can be one block or subdivided. And these are the apartments. Apartment size change from 80 square meter, and then you can go as big as you like. One floor is 1,500 square meters. So choose what you like. My advice, build small. Good quality, but small, but very good quality. You can always make things bigger. This is a small marina which I did, or working on at the moment in Malta. We just submitted the documents. And as I told one of the people here, more and more in countries like this, I start to think that it is more interesting to work with the existing buildings. Because many times, everybody wants quickly to build something new. But why don't we use what we have? If I have a house, I don't start to build a new house. I first usually try to improve it. So why don't we do the same with our cities? So here, this is a building which is a beautiful building, and we now slowly start to redevelop it. Just simply clean it up. Make it better. Make the space in front of it, pedestrianize it, and make sure it is a more attractive space. In a small country like Malta, there is no pedestrian streets. How come? You can walk everywhere. It's one of the most important qualities of a city, where you can walk. I will come back to this later. A tower in the Netherlands, this is close to where my office is, the white one is mine. It looks like this. And a project which I'm just more or less, would say, closing my experience. I started with social housing, and now going back to redevelop social housing in Russia. I worked for so many people in Russia with so much money that it is almost strange not to focus on the problems of the cities, focusing on where there is poor quality housing. The majority of people in Moscow live in houses which are out, their lifespan is over. And I was able to redevelop this with the Russian team, to redevelop this whole project in which we slowly demolish part, renovate part, and build new, all mixed together. And the last project which I would like to show you, which just to give you some idea of what I work on, this is a project which I just won, let's say, is just awarded. We now start to work on it. It will be the first fully sustainable district in the Netherlands. Sustainable meaning that in this district, in this quadrat, there is space for around 2,500 families. It has electric, the motorway has been covered with solar panels. It creates its own energy. We take care of our own waste. We have no cars which drive on gasoline or whatever. We have self-driving cars only. And every house has no energy consumption. Whatever comes in, goes out. And the fun thing is that I spent a year and a half convincing one of the biggest pension funds in the Netherlands to be the investor in this project. They finally said, yes, we just signed the contract days before I left here for Dominican Republic. And it is an amazing achievement. I think that now finally pension fund is willing to go all the way in a project like this. So it's, as you can see, it's not high, it has a few towers, but most of it is low. You see here, it is pedestrian, predominantly pedestrianized. There are cars, self-driving. The car doesn't think, the road thinks. The road gives information to the car, so the car knows also what happens on the next street. It's not just the car looking whether there is a foot pedestrian, but the car knows that in the other street there are much less pedestrians, so he better go this way. It's a very simple grid, a very simple way to try and improve the way we deal with our cities. It's a small test, it's a small project. We have in total 2,000 plus houses. That's about it. But a project which I'm very proud of. Now back to the subject, how do we take care of our cities? Here you can see a little bit the issue of our, let's say, circular way of thinking about the economy and circular way of thinking about, let's say, our cities. We have too much thought all those years, and I was educated the same way, to expand, to make things bigger. But we should not make things bigger. Bigger in cities is not better. We should make them more intense and make sure that we reuse what we have. That's not just in materials, in energy, but it is also in buildings, in everything what we do. We should try first to see what we have. Can we switch it, turn it around, make it more sexy, make it more better, instead of thinking that we have to just demolish and throw away. Even the worst building, the value of the residual value of materials is most of the time 22%. You can say, well, you know, I can cheaper build it faster, quicker. It's not correct. Don't throw away. Don't pollute. Don't do it. And if you want to really take your own, let's say, destiny serious, even from a financial point of view, reusing what you have done is one of the correct ways to take care of proper finance. So this is what I would think, and believe me, architects are really not to be trusted. Be careful when you listen to them, because this is one of those, you know, this is, you ever read the book, The Fountainhead? When I was a young student, I couldn't stop reading about an architect who becomes famous and he builds and he builds and builds. He's not understood. People don't listen to him, but every day he becomes bigger in his mind. And in reality, of course, the world goes on and on and on. And of course, architects are also not always nice guys. Some of us are not really correct. We are not really consistent in what we say. And I think that means that also we all have a responsibility to think with what we are asking an architect or a planner or a political person what to do. Think real and make sure that you do things properly. Yes, I love architecture, but architecture is not everything. It's just a small part of the problem. It is not the most important thing. It is an important thing. Just the fact that you want to make things better, you want things look good, is already fine. But just being busy with it to look good for the sake of looking good is not enough. It's a small problem, but a big issue. I mean, there's many, many questions you can put forward in many projects whether people are really have, let's say, the ethics to do things right. And I'm sure that you have, I encounter it in every country. I'm sure that you know the examples here as well. We have a common responsibility to seriously improve what we do. Not just quickly sell, not an idea, not selling your building because you love to build, but make sure that you know for sure it really helps us making things better. And of course, let's say, I love to be the architect of this, but this is St. Petersburg. This is a British-American firm who proposed to do this tower. A 300-meter, 400-meter tower in the middle of a city which doesn't really have space enough. It doesn't need such a thing. And this is the city of St. Petersburg. So, very strange, people thought. Why everybody is against this building? Logically, they are against it. Why would you want to go in that direction if you have so many other options and so many other problems to resolve? Or this. This is one of my clients. I did nice things for him, but he built also this. You don't mind that when I see a client building like this, hey, do you have another way to do things? Is this the only way? Can we improve it? Or the discussion of some architects who are so tired of the technology and the problems that they start to ridiculize it and pretending that we are taken over by technology. Let's be happy that we have technology. Let's be happy that things are possible now which could not be done before. It is not something against architecture. Architecture is not something sacred which can only do well because of the architect says so. So I think that there is some real problems we need to start addressing. And these problems can be addressed, but they're not always architectural questions. They're questions which can be resolved by many people. And they can be resolved on a small scale. They don't necessarily need a big master plan, a gigantic approach. Small-scale developments work many times even better than big approaches like this. There are huge problems in the world. And we can't ignore them. We can't simply think that we are the only ones to know how to solve it. We have to allow people to work not only from top-down, but also bottom-up. Yes, of course, this is one of the biggest issues in the world at the moment. Most of the people now are going to live in the city. And there are some predictions that even in 2070, 2080, it will be close to 90% of the people who live in cities. Does it mean that these cities become bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, or do we use them better? Do you know how much part of cities are not really functioning well? You know it from your own city. Do you know how many square meters, how many cubic meters of buildings are unused? Just in my own city of Rotterdam, there is an enormous amount of buildings which are not used. So-called they are outdated, they don't use the right function, etc., etc. Why we don't spend a little bit more time on investigating that territory and work on those? People are not stupid. People are much smarter than planners and architects because people go where it is easy to go, where it is nice. The telephone, my iPhone, it brings me to places where I've never been, and it gives me connection to something I've never been in contact with. It means that also that, of course, that people don't need to stay where they are. If it is not good in one place, people will move to another. People are free to travel. If you have a little bit of education, you take a plane and you say, well, sorry, but this country is not good enough for me, I go somewhere else. So cities have to learn to compete with each other. It is no longer the government, it's no longer the state. It is the city which competes. People check out what they can do in this city. They may stay here because their family is still here. But many young people would easily change that life if they can find, with their friends, a prosperity somewhere else. So that quality, that choice, should be our guideline. That thinking should be what we should think of how to do it. And how does it work? Very simple. Cities which work well are always multiple. They are always diverse. Multiple in the kind of industries, multiple in the kind of political ideology, multiple even in religion. The more multiple they are, the better the cities work. Not just a city full of banks, not just a city with small shops. It's a combination of all those. And I think that's one of the things we can learn very well. People start to change their perspective and are able to do completely different things than what we could have done maybe 50 years ago or 40 years ago. And understand that this is one of the more important things for people to think about. The OECD has an inventory. It's a very interesting, let's say, site. You can go and Google it. You can see exactly how, let's say, countries and cities function, how they work. And it is very interesting to see that the quality of life is not when you have a big amount of money. Quality of life is not when you have a job. Quality of life is not when you have education, but if you have all those things. And people are really smarter because we are made smart with our networking. We know how to find it. So that's what I would think is, please be smart and try to make sure that whatever you develop, you tick all the boxes. Maybe all the boxes a little bit better than one and forget the other. So yes, if you check very simple, there are strange comparisons. There is we just made this comparison. There is Vienna has become for many years in a row considered to be the best city to live in. I'm not saying that I like the Austrians. They're also a little bit strange. But it's a good life there. It's clean, safe, a lot of culture, good work environment, etc., etc. So and if a city like Moscow, for instance, is 168. There's around, in this list, around 300 cities. So Moscow is in the middle. So what do you need to do to try and improve that? And how can you do that? It's very simple. Here you can see the list of countries which are, or cities which are on the top and which are on the bottom. And you can recognize some of those. It's not going to be solved with just a whole lot of money, and it's not going to be solved with one big master plan. Believe me, there will be no person in the world who can solve this problem on his own. But a lot of small people can do this. A lot of smaller initiatives can really do it. So we have said, okay, if you look at it, a country like Moscow and Russia, for many people, looks very closed. One way, one system. But it's completely not the case anymore. In the last 10 years, Moscow changed tremendously because it is not, let's say, a mono-functional city like this one, Detroit, only car industry. It collapsed completely because of the fact that there was only one industry. Moscow has, this, like maybe New York, a very, very diverse culture, a very diverse way of doing business. Much more than you would think. Everybody is still thinking maybe that the Russians, okay, they're complicated. But the Russians are very versatile. They're very flexible. Young Russians are picking up everything wherever they can. And they make a lot of startups. Moscow has one of the most number of small startups compared to many other cities in the world. That is a great quality, because that's the way a city starts to innovate and to become farther. This is a great city, beautiful. I stay there 1 day, 2 days, and then I go, like everybody else. It's not a city to live, it's a city to visit. It's good for a few times, but it's not a city. This is not a real example of how to make things. This is artificial in a way. It is synthetic. And we should not focus on this because it's a nice picture. Go there, bring your girlfriend, bring your boyfriend, enjoy, but now back to reality again. Huh? This is also nice. Amsterdam is nice. This looks cool. But Amsterdam is not cool because of this stupid water. Amsterdam is good because there is an enormous amount of small businesses, young groups of innovative. There's an enormous, let's say, energy coming out of that city, which creates a dynamics which almost no government can create. No institution can make this. And I think that should be a lesson to learn from. If you think about improving a city, if you want to think about improving the country, think about ways to allow this to happen. Once that happens, you can simply help any kind of initiative and make them live next to each other and make sure that they don't bite each other. There's a way to see, if you look at all those cities, if you compare, and of course it doesn't mean that things go by itself. I mean, this is also Paris. There are parts which of course are not so good, no? Okay, so is Paris wrong? No, just try to work on this. And it's not also, this is not difficult. You don't need to have one big master plan to resolve this. Even look at Moscow, what Moscow changed. I mean, that's the towers I built myself. Moscow has changed tremendously in the last 20 years. It's not just these buildings, it's the whole infrastructure, the way of people thinking. Young people there think much smarter than in most places in the Netherlands. And that's what is really a great help. This is, of course, also Moscow. So when I asked 20 years ago to my clients, I said, should we not do something about this? They say, Eric, are you stupid? We want to make money, so forget about this. Now, 20 years later, they ask me, could you please do something here? Because everybody understands you can't keep this like it is. People will not accept it. Let's say that you have in your own country so many opportunities, so many different things you can work on. There's so many old buildings to do something with. There is no modern architect who can build this for you. So you should be extremely careful with what you have here. Use it and improve it. Make it part of the modern life as much as you can. Don't treat it like an old grandmother. Treat it like something new, which is part of your daily life. That would make Santo Domingo and the whole of the country, I think, a much better place than trying to ask architects to build something special. Just very briefly still, how does it look like? Why is Vienna interesting? Because there are not just one big opera, there are so many small initiatives which make it culturally attractive. The same as you can see in Amsterdam. The same when it looks to shopping. There's not one big shopping area, it's dispersed, it's everywhere. People can walk from one to another. That's the same what you can see in Vienna. This is where you can see all these different places. If a city is walkable, and the discussion today about traffic makes it very clear, you have to make sure a city is walkable. Maybe bicycle, fine, forget about bicycle, but at least you should be able to walk there. Then you solve your problem of your infrastructure. Moscow now has discovered that they should forget about the car, they should pedestrianize. And suddenly the city becomes nice and friendly. Even the Moscovites look more friendly when they walk. If they're in a car, they're like ready to kill you. If they walk, they behave. They relate. This is the Holland, Amsterdam, the same thing. Just 90% of the spaces in Amsterdam are just walking areas. And everybody loves it. I don't know anyone. It's completely inefficient, sorry to say. But everybody likes it. Everybody enjoys. Everybody communicates with each other. This is not a model. Don't think to copy this. But it is something to learn from, which you can think of. The same with parks. Everybody thinks parks, we need something big. Small parks, small green pockets are important. This hotel, I mean, maybe stupid for me to say, but I was impressed to see this small garden. So I'm more happy with this garden than a huge park somewhere, because I live here and I could sit here and work outside. That is a great quality. That kind of pockets you need. Cities need that kind of small scale. Of course, big scale also good, but please give attention to the small scale green. This is all the green in Holland. And even, you can see it here, even in Moscow, there are endless amount of places which you can activate and make green. I tried to explain this to Russians 15 years ago, and they said, Eric, go away, go away. I want to make money. Now, if you go to Moscow now, every place is walkable. Every public space is well developed. Of course, they have a football to show off, but who cares? What is the reason? They have done it now, and suddenly Moscow became a much more friendly and much more attractive city. Yes, and of course, you can see it's the place where all people go to, small startups, they go to this kind of places. They don't go to anonymous places. They go to places where they have a small group of students, friends, who start and innovate. That's what is the most important. So here you can see some comparison figures, how that works and how these effects help to make these cities much better, much more performing on life standards and life expectations. So yes, we have done quite some bad things. I mean, this is Athens. One style of architecture. I'm sorry, I'm a modernist. I don't mind a white building with minimalist forms. Great. But if you go there, it's terrible. It's dead. It's really dead. Now, slowly, because of the crisis, Athens starts to slowly make new interventions. They don't build, they don't have the money, but small things start to happen. And slowly, this hopefully will change from a monotonous way and one architectural style into a multiple and a plural style. So yes, of course, there are cities which have had this in their genes. The Barcelona, the Gerda's plan was, of course, a genius idea of one structure which could allow different things to be inside that scheme. But we're not always that fortunate that we have a scheme like this. Your cities are not like this, our cities are not like this. But it worked perfectly for Cerda, it worked excellently well, and this Cerda plan could allow all the changes over time to work and keep on making the city attractive. Fine. So let's learn from this. Let's look at other cities. Tokyo. If you look at Tokyo from above, it looks like a mess. It's like, wow, God, these Japanese don't know what they're doing. But if you look more closely, there are always extremely attractive places. And it's very strange. The big size is extremely well matched with the small scale. There's an enormous amount of attention to very attractive places in that huge jungle of concrete and streets and asphalt. And I think that is, again, an example to see how cities function well. When that's available, it works. If it is not, it doesn't. And of course, you have parts like this as well, but it works coincidentally. City of Amsterdam is, we don't build new buildings. We change the function. It's almost impossible to build something new there. But every day, something new happens. That's maybe more of a lesson than to think that you can always solve the problem by building new buildings. This is the High Line in New York. Most of you have heard about it, of course. A train track which was suddenly used as a pedestrian zone. A very, very ugly city in the 60s and 70s. I lived in New York in the 1970s. It was they would kill you if you drive a bicycle. Now, a lot of places are pedestrianized. A lot of places are changing. And the functions are changing with them. That is so amazingly good about it. That you have all kinds of different things. And now, look, this is Moscow. This is what my project, which I showed you before. This is what happens in Moscow. All these buildings are now sort of dilapidated. 20 years ago, they didn't even listen to me when I said, should we not do something about it? Now they understand. We are now going to do 4 times 10,000 houses in 4 different districts, redeveloping the old together with the new, and hopefully on a small enough scale so that people will still feel that it is part of their own development. That is not someone from abroad coming to implement a plan, but it is something which works on a scale which works for everybody. This is what we do now, partially demolishing, but also partially retaining. Because people, of course, even in a country like Russia, the news gives you the idea that you're not allowed to say anything because they kill you. It's not true at all. People know how to say something, and if they don't like it, they know how to express their frustration as well. And it is essential. We cannot ignore these kind of problems. In my brilliant, let's say, second home, Malta at the moment, we build only houses which cost 3,000 euros a month. There's no Maltese who has 3,000 euros to spend on rent. So it's only used for people like me, for my wife. That's not sustainable. That's not the way to... It's nice that we have it, but it doesn't solve the problem of a country. It doesn't solve the problem of the city. So, and this neither. I mean, sorry, it's affordable, but could it be a little bit more nuanced? Also, Russians are not stupid. They might not be shocked by this, but there is other ways to live as well. So that's why there's many ways to do things. This is a this block was separately demolished, not one block, but they kept parts, and then they made this out of it. Or an example here, this is in France, where they changed that building into that one, where they just simply added balconies. There are many, many ways to do things. Here you see the same transformation. Here, a project in Denmark. Small-scale transformations which work perfectly fine. There's no need to be the big gesture, the big architect everywhere. There are many ways to do things. And here, someone decided, let's add things. Small hotel extension, this is it. You can't make it better, I think. Exceptionally well. This is in opposite of the Kremlin, an old factory. My client asked me 10 years ago, Eric, let's make something new. We didn't make any new building. We just reused the buildings. Every building is as it is, and is simply reused. It's now the coolest, hippest place of Moscow. It is TV studios, it's art galleries, it's places to live, and maybe one day he will allow me to make a small new building. But for the time being, it works. This is what they do there. Organize things, make sure the city functions. And another example, I mean, nothing to do with me, but I found this one a very nice example. This is before, and this is after. No need for a master plan. There's need for action and understanding of a problem, how to solve that particular problem. Here an example in Spain, here an example in the Netherlands, how to reuse existing buildings. It is extremely simple. The great examples in England, of course, are there. But these things work. They are exceptionally good. You would never build such a building new. And the High Line, I showed it to you, or these public spaces. So my plea to you is, please, ask me to make a very beautiful new building. I will happily be your architect. I would love to make the most exclusive high-rise tower and to design the coolest things for you. But at the same time, it is extremely important that we try to do something good with what we have. Just doing things nice, putting a flower pot in front of your door is as important as bringing in a big architectural statement. Make things accessible, like we learned in the lecture about the favelas. Connect everything. Try to simply allow things to develop by being open to small-scale ideas. And this is what I think, for me, summarized very simple. Architecture is very important, but it is only a means. It is not the only thing. It is very important that we think about the quality of the life in the city. It is the quality of that life which make people like the city and keep it as it is or improve it. Activate your centers. Don't think that you need to do this with buildings. Do this with activities first. Make sure you preserve the green. I mean, you have beautiful green, but you could use much more. The streets could be much greener. And it is one of the things which people appreciate very much. Galvanized was there, and as I understood also from the previous lectures, make things accessible not just for an exclusive group, but for everybody. Make it accessible for all. And maybe the most important thing I can advise you or give you from my experience is start now. There is no need to first discuss. There's no need to have 500 people to agree. Every individual can do something. Every small investor can do a great thing. Every initiative like this, if a publisher can come up with a symposium like this, that's the way to go. Do take care of your own city and make sure you don't wait till tomorrow, but start today. Thank you very much.
Excelente participación del arquitecto Erick Van Egeraat. Vamos a permitir 2 o 3 preguntas para compartir un poquito con él. Así que vamos a ver quién se anima para ya casi ir cerrando este evento. A ver, la primera pregunta para el arquitecto Erick Van Egeraat. Adelante, señor.
No, era comentando aquí entre nosotros. Gracias.
La primera pregunta, una pregunta para el señor Erick Van Egeraat. Ok, aquí tenemos una.
Hi, Eric. Thank you for coming to the DR and welcome. I have 2 questions regarding your practice. It's very impressive. And is there a common trait that you have with your clients, developers, other than maybe your energy and your creativity that has helped you to make possible those projects in the relationship with your clients and the projects in itself, that you say, okay, this is something that I always work around in order to make the projects happen?
There is no trick. Let's say what I've learned, if you go to another country, is I bring what I have learned, but if I don't listen, it will never work. So every time, wherever I go, I have to do something different. There's no little trick which I can play by which I convince a client. All my clients are completely different. All the countries are different. All the cities are different. And what I've learned is that please embrace that. Don't try to make things the same. I was in a panel one day with an American architect, quite a serious company. And he was sort of listening to what I said, and his response was, well, you know, Houston, Beijing, New York, it's all the same. I said, guys, look, it's a way to look at the world, but it's not my way. It's not the way I think we help each other. The way we help each other is to make sure that we bring 2 different things and try to make sure they work. So that means that I have to understand what my client needs, even if he's just after money. Nothing wrong with it. I'm not a moral person to judge. If he likes to make a lot of money, I can help him to do so. But I shouldn't sell, let's say, a social issue to a guy who's only interested in money. Let's be practical also. I'm not a priest. I'm not trying to sell you, let's say, the glorified reality. I'm trying to explain that we are living in a world where people are much smarter than our ideas. People are much faster to find another route than the one I have planned. So I think that is what the message should be, is that, okay, then work with that smartness. There must be so many people here in the Dominican Republic who have good ideas. Do they all first need to agree, as we did maybe in the 60s, where we go after the leader? Let's just do small things and do them well. And if everybody does it well, I'm sure that these cities will survive and become much better and much more attractive than what it is now. That's the way I've done all my projects. I designed 800 projects. I just made a count. I built 173 buildings, and not in one of the buildings I did the same trick. It's commercially not the best way. My bookkeeper is not always happy, but it makes it fun to work this way.
Yes. My other question.
¿Una otra pregunta?
Yes.
Okay.
Aquí.
¿Se puede poner de pie, por favor?
But of course. Yes, I have 2 questions.
One, I would like to be a little empathized with me because I have a brother who's an architect, and I would like him to be at least a little bit successful as you. And I'd like to know, to what do you attribute your success? And also, how have you convinced, let's say, your promoters, your developers, your collaborators to build your almost disruptive and innovative spaces? Yes.
You have to explain this again because I'm not so smart. I didn't hear it or it's.
Okay, sorry.
So make it simpler.
Yeah, simple.
Just speak to a simple guy who understands only simple things, please.
Okay, so.
Disruptive, I'm not disruptive. I try to be very facilitating. So.
Disruptive? Okay, it's.
Yeah, I don't know. You call it disruptive. I think I'm a facilitator. I just listen to what I see. I pick it up and turn it around and make it better, if I can. Sometimes I fail.
Okay, let's simplify it. Let's just stay with the question, to what do you attribute your success as an architect?
I am not, guys, I'm just an architect. I mean, it's hard work. Don't sleep too much. Don't drink too much. Don't party too much. I don't know what you want me to say. It's, let's say, I like to work. I seriously like to look at things in a real way. I don't like to tell myself a story which I don't believe. I don't want to believe in things just because they sound good. Let's say if I'm here, I know that whatever I say here does not apply when I speak in Germany. It's completely different worlds. There is no comparison. A German person wouldn't understand anything of what's going on here because he's not used to it. So if I don't move with that background, if I don't, let's say, assimilate at least, I shouldn't be like you, because I will never be like you, fortunately, because I'm different. But if I don't want to understand what is your problem, what I'm doing here. And that's maybe the way I've worked, let's say, almost my whole life.
Okay. Alejandro, tenías una segunda pregunta.
My second question would be, do you have any Russian clients that would like to come to invest in the DR?
Yes, I think there are. Of course, there are.
Perfect. Welcome.
No, look, but be realistic. Any investor, I mean, I bring investors to other countries, but of course they have one very logic thought. What can I do what the local guy can't? Because there's also local people who have money. So for many investors, I mean, I try to give you a very simple example. I'm Dutch. Holland is quite well organized, so you would think Russian comes to Holland, no problem, he puts his money on the table and he can buy and build anything he like, yes? So he's no risk of being taxed worse, or I mean, everything is pretty clean. So for a Russian financial institution, I thought, would be piece of cake. Bring your money, put it on the table, let's go. You know what they all said to me? They said, Erick, are you stupid? Why would we do it? Your Dutch are much better than we are. We will never make so much money as what they do. So we better bring our money somewhere else where they don't know so well. We're not going to bring money to Holland because the Dutch investor knows much smarter how to get 5 cents more out of an amount than I can. So don't bring me this kind of things. I can work in places which are much more, let's say, complicated. So yes, that's why I said they might be very interested to work here, but they would not do anything you can do. They would do something you can't do. Like I, of course, would only be an architect here of any value if I do something no architect from DR can do. Because otherwise you're always better. You're faster, cheaper, quicker, more close, no use. So yes, the answer is there are people, but you have to come up with something really attractive for that crazy guy from abroad.
Thank you so much. So welcome to the Dominican Republic, Mr. Van Egeraat. Thank you so much for your conference.